shut down the HBCU program on Friday after several players were featured in a rap music video that was filmed inside the team's locker room. The administration is still investigating. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
KBLA Talk 1580 is dedicated to empowering our communities by providing progressive talk radio for our audience. We strive to be an intersectional voice for the voiceless. As a Black-owned and operated station, we are committed to highlighting diverse perspectives and creating safe spaces for meaningful dialogue. We believe that everyone has something unique to bring to these political, economic, social, and cultural conversations, and we don't shy away from the hard conversations about current events. We endeavor to be a beacon of hope and understanding, while boldly challenging listeners to think more deeply about difficult topics that impact us all. With this in mind, our mission statement at KBLA Talk 1580 is simple: to create an inclusive platform that promotes civil discourse through honest dialogue and encourages personal growth among our listeners, so they can become the active agents of change. Our vision is to establish ourselves as the premier radio network with relevant programming across the beloved community, connecting people through shared experiences and collective power for lasting impact beyond these challenging times.
People. This is street radio for unsung hero. Riding in the Rego, trying to stay legal. My daughter found Nemo, I found a new primo. Yeah, you know how we do it for the people and the struggle of the brothers and the folks. The lovers of the dope. Experiment to discover hope, scuffle for notes. The rougher I wrote, times was harder. Went from rock starter to the voice of a martyr. Why white folk focus on dogs and yoga? My people on the low end trying to ball and get over. Lyrics are like liquor for the fallen soldier. From the bounce to the house, it's all our culture. Every day we hustling, trying to get them customers. Law, we ain't trusting them. Thick bras, we lusting them. Sick and tired of punching it. I look on the bus at them. When I see them struggling, I think I'm touching them.
About the people. About the people. KBLA Talk 1580. Looking forward to the launch of our new series, Mornings with the Mayor. Next hour, Mayor Karen Bass will sit down for a candid conversation with me here on First Things First once a month, every month, and we launch that series today. Also be hearing from Assemblywoman Tina McKinnon, bottom half of the hour, as she takes a look at what's going on, the pushback to diversity, equity, and inclusion programs. Right now, we're being joined by a Republican. He's an associate at the National Center for Free Enterprise, Free Enterprise Project, which is the original and premier opponent of what they call the woke takeover of American corporate life. They file shareholder resolutions. They engage corporate CEOs and board members, and they submit public comments and engage federal leaders. They put together legislation. They file lawsuits and direct media campaigns to push corporations away from what they're calling a woke agenda. Stefan Padfield worked in private practice at Kravitz, Swain, and Moore, and clerked for 2 federal court judges. Originally immigrated to the U.S. as a child, became a citizen as a child, and served 6 years in the U.S. Army. Stefan Padfield, welcome.
Oh, thanks so much for having me. If I can just make one adjustment, which is we're not a Republican or partisan organization at the National Center. We are certainly conservative, and I think a lot of our positions end up aligning with Republicans, but we are a nonpartisan organization just trying to get corporations back to what we would describe as neutral.
But actually, I mean, I've read some of your papers, and I'm looking at what you're pushing. I can't see one single thing that doesn't fit a pretty far right Republican. I wouldn't even call it a centrist Republican kind of portfolio.
Well, I think what makes it centrist, there's a couple of reactions to that. So one is, among conservatives, most whom are going to align with the Republican Party, there's a lot of divisions about these sorts of issues in terms of how active we should be in trying to get corporations, again, back to what we consider to be a neutral, creating value sort of perspective. And so even within, you talk about Mitt Romney, for example, Chris Christie, right? We're not going to line up positionally with those folks very often. And as far as, being far right, I think the issue is, again, we're trying to get businesses to make products and services, create jobs, do the things that under a capitalist economy has basically brought us to the cusp of eradicating poverty. Get back to that rather than doing the sort of social.
Are you telling me that we're at the cusp of eradicating poverty? Is that your position?
Yeah, I think a lot of studies have pointed out that we historically, over the course of humankind,
you're saying compared to medieval times. I mean, because the gap between the very wealthy and the bottom of the economic ladder in the United States is increasingly wide. So that doesn't seem like moving towards eradicating poverty. It seems like moving towards reinstating poverty.
No, those are two very different things. Inequality and poverty are two very different things.
Tell it to the person that's suffering from inequality. I mean, that's word salad.
No, it's not word salad at all. They're very different concepts. You can argue about the problems of inequality, and there are problems of inequality, but that's not the same thing as asking whether or not people are living in poverty. And we have gotten
well, it kind of is, though, because when you get to the point where we are, like right now with the SAG-AFTRA strike, I'm a member of SAG, you have the distance between what the rank and file working actor makes and the corporate bosses, the Barry Dillers of the world make, is getting wider and wider, and that exacerbates poverty because you get giant corporations pleading brokenness when a mere 1% of their profits would meet the demands of the rank and file actors. So you can say literally they're different, but they are definitely related. They're
well, I think
part of part of a trend line which doesn't move towards eradicating poverty in this country.
Well, again, we clearly differ on that particular issue, right? I mean, I think that you can have a trend line that is increasing inequality and at the same time decreasing poverty, right? It's sort of the question of, yes, we can have no inequality and all be poor, or we can have massive inequality and yet the floor is high enough that nobody is struggling for a meal or a roof over their head, right?
Well, we sure ain't there. I don't know. I don't know where you live, but every major city in this country has people living in tents. So I don't see how you can say we're getting closer to a point where, the ceiling is higher, but there's no poverty.
No, I didn't say there's no poverty. I said we have improved on poverty and that capitalism is the driver behind that. And the other question is, what's going to get us moving in the right direction better, right? And so our argument is that if you look at history and you look at sort of socialist and communist regimes, they literally destroy economies where you have everybody standing in bread lines. So we don't see that.
Have we ever had an actual, give me an example of what you would consider a socialist regime?
Well, I mean, you get that distinction between socialist and communist. A lot of people use socialism. In fact, that's the terminology that communists have used, right? So,
well, I mean, just give me an example. Yeah, give me an example of what you're talking about when you talk about bread lines.
Right. So I'm talking about Stalin's Russia. I'm talking about Pol Pot's Cambodia. I'm talking about Mao's China.
Right. So communism. Got it. So communism as opposed to democratic socialism. Got it. Okay. Well, look, I want to dive deeper when we come forward because you really, you have beef with a lot of corporations and even Wall Street financiers for what you call their corporate wokeness. I want to find out why you think that and what you think the solution is when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
More of First Things First with Dominique DePrima when we come forward.
Girl, I have a secret. When I get stressed out, I get sweaty. That's why I use Secret Clinical Antiperspirant. It's like my own secret weapon. For 72 hours, I get Secret's strongest protection against sweat caused by stress, heat, and activity, because you know how crazy life can get. Plus, it's made with advanced odor fighters that don't just cover up smelliness. They help prevent it from happening in the first place. Believe me, if I weren't wearing Secret, I'd be a hot, smelly mess. Thankfully, Secret works.
Spilled your drink? Quick, the quicker picker-upper. Bounty picks up spills quicker, and each sheet is 2 times more absorbent, so you can use less than the leading ordinary brand. So you can get back to your night. Bounty, the quicker picker-upper.
Where are we on the lineup?
It's official. Avery is producing Main Street Music Days.
We need to be ready. We're going to have lots of people. What's the status on the new sound engineer?
They need an audio technician to keep things level from sound checks to encores.
Make sure audio from one stage does not compete with another.
Indeed can help them hire great people fast.
I need Indeed.
Indeed you do. Our hiring platform instantly connects you with quality candidates, and you can schedule and conduct virtual interviews right from the Indeed dashboard. Visit Indeed.com/credit and get $75 towards your first sponsored job. Terms and conditions apply.
Attention taxpayers. Ready for some bad news? With $80 billion in new funding from Congress, the IRS has launched their most aggressive hiring campaign ever to ramp up enforcement. If you're ignoring your taxes, don't delay another minute, because your paycheck, your bank account, even your home or business could already be at risk. Now, here's the good news. Optima Tax Relief, America's #1 tax relief firm, can get to work immediately helping to protect you from the IRS. A+ rated by the Better Business Bureau. Their tax attorneys and licensed professionals are experts at resolving tax problems. Let them help determine if you qualify for the Fresh Start Initiative or other powerful IRS tax assistance programs. Take control. Call Optima Tax Relief now for a free consultation.
Call 800-919-9077. 800-919-9077. 800-919-9077.
Optima Tax Relief.
Some restrictions apply. For complete details, please visit OptimaTaxRelief.com.
We've got a lot to talk about.
Race, culture wars, political turf battles, criminal justice and injustice, the courts. These are the conversations you won't hear elsewhere. My guests are leading journalists, celebrities, and sports figures, elected leaders, and influencers. They aren't afraid to get into it and say the quiet part out loud. With Ariva Martin in real time, your commute just became the most engaging part of your day. Tune in weekdays from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. or find us on YouTube. Ariva Martin in real time, when you want it straight, no chaser.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black. The conversation continues right now with Dominique DePrima on First Things First.
Yes, it does. And we are being visited by Stephen Padfield with the National Center for Public Policy Research and their free enterprise project. So you are doing a lot of different kinds of work to stop what you call the woke takeover of American corporate life. But I mean, what we're talking about is private business, right, for the most part. And if a private business or corporation decides that they want to enact diversity, equity, inclusion, we know from research that corporations and educational institutions tend to do better when they have a diverse population. So isn't there a logical capitalist reason for adopting those kinds of policies that would be something you wouldn't oppose just based on the metrics?
So I think there's a couple of responses. One is I think the research is at best mixed. You can certainly find studies that are positive in terms of what they find the effects of various forms of diversity to be, but you can also find studies that show that especially when things get tough, that sort of the various sorts of diversity actually undermine the effectiveness because there's too much infighting because people aren't focused in the same direction. I think the issue of
So just because there's diversity means people aren't focused in the same direction? I mean, you have people of all different backgrounds that have conservative and progressive views, so that wouldn't necessarily follow.
What I'm saying is That's absolutely true. What I'm saying is there are studies that have shown that based on the same metrics that studies use to show positive effects of diversity, those same metrics can also be sort of sliced in terms of different situations to show that companies perform worse with more diversity.
I haven't seen
And
those
the
studies.
theory
Love to
underneath
see
that-
those. Yeah, I haven't seen
Yeah, no, I mean,
anything,
they're posted on
nothing like that, and I've looked at a lot of information on this. Okay, so you're saying in some cases the studies show it's bad for the bottom line. So you would be opposed to those kinds of programs because of those studies, because you think diversity is bad for the bottom line?
No, it's a multi-level answer. So one is that we reject the proposition that diversity is just an unqualified good and there's no concerns and everybody should just get on board. We reject that, and there's data to support, to be cautious about that. The other point is simply that racial discrimination is illegal, right? So the mere fact that you're a private corporation and
really.
you want to start discriminating on the basis of race, right, that's illegal. So we defend that proposition that you should not be discriminating on the basis of race.
Right, but repair is not discrimination. Repair is repair. If you've been historically discriminated against and then somebody makes it right, that's not discrimination. That's called equity. Another thing I know that you don't agree with the concept of.
Right. No, we very much disagree with the concept of equity in terms of moving pieces around of people based on their color, in terms of who's going to get what position, who's going to get interviewed, who's going to get what
Perhaps
resources.
it's not based on
actually
color. It's
reject
based on
good.
historical discrimination and marginalization.
I don't think I don't see the corporations doing that at all. They are very clear about we're going to hire more black people. We're going to interview more black people. We're going to promote more black people.
Not just because they love black people, because they're trying to make up for our systemic exclusion from those spaces.
So how about you do a program where you have people provide evidence that they themselves as individuals are suffering consequences, right? So you could do some sort of socioeconomic
Right, because you don't want to
perspective.
deal with the way that it's baked into the cake. You just want it to be each individual fighting for themselves rather than a class of people who have, as a class of people, been discriminated against. We know that we're stronger together, so you would rather have us as individuals because you really don't believe in repair.
No, that's not correct at all.
So you believe
here's
in
the thing.
reparations?
One, I believe in asking what is the best way forward. I do not think reparations are the best way forward. I don't think racial discrimination is the best way forward for the country as a whole, including the populations that are being sought to be helped by these progressive programs, right? I mean, we just had this opinion come down by the Supreme Court on affirmative action, right? There's some really good evidence that the affirmative action has actually really undermined the success rate of black populations, which they were trying to help, right?
And that's absolutely not true. We have even your favorite Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas wouldn't be there if it wasn't for affirmative action. And actually, yeah, I guess in that sense, it has undermined our well-being. But I mean, that's just always seems to be coming from people who benefit from the removal of affirmative action, i.e. people who are not black, indigenous, women. I mean, that's an opinion, in other words. That's not a fact. So that's your opinion. You think we're better off without programs to fix our historic exclusion from some of these elite institutions, and the fact that we are the only group of people in this country who actually there were laws that prevented us from being educated.
So the list of black conservatives who are very happy that affirmative action has been ended is quite long. I'm happy to direct people to those. But here's the point.
Well, yeah, but you're not one of those.
We are all trying.
Clarence Thomas is one of those, but he benefited from affirmative action. So that's the height of hypocrisy.
If your proposition is that I shouldn't have an opinion because I'm a white male, then I don't know why you asked me on your show. Right? So we are
No,
all
that's
trying
not
to
my
make
proposition. My
predictions.
proposition is that your opinion should be tempered by the fact that you have an obvious dog in this fight, which is, hoarding resources, which is something that historically, that class of people have done versus other classes of people in this country. And so if you go individual by individual, that doesn't address the ways that it's baked into the cake.
we all have a dog in this fight, right? I mean, clearly we all have a dog in this fight because the direction of the country going forward is very much going to be impacted on whether or not we continue to do things like discriminate on the basis of race under the cover of saying we're doing anti-discrimination, right? These are predictions that we're making about what's the best way forward. So to some extent, we're all left with our best guess of what's the optimal way going forward.
Actually, but we can analyze what we've done and see what works and what doesn't, coming to where we are right now. I do want to ask you about your war against, ESGs and corporate, not just portfolios that are meant to support, say, the end of climate change or what you would call a woke agenda, but also corporate, what we'll call socially innovative, right, corporations. If I'm a private corporation and I decide that I want part of my corporate mission is to be socially conscious or to support a certain kind of social justice in this country, who are you or anyone else to tell me I can't do that? Aren't Republicans, aren't conservatives the ones that say, let private enterprise be, don't regulate, let them just, do whatever they want? Why would you feel it's your job to come in and tell a corporation whether or not they can have a socially innovative mission or include DEI in their corporate structure?
So our system generally requires the corporate decision makers to act in the best interest of the corporation, which is generally understood to be shareholder wealth maximization, right? So if you can show through some expected value calculations that you have, including opportunity cost, the best way forward to profit by, for example, adopting some what might be called quote unquote woke policies, that's really fine. That's
or socially responsible would be another way of putting it, yeah.
Well, I mean,
there's a real problematic. Well, no, I mean, you say which is generally understood to be shareholder profit maximization. What is generally understood to be? I mean, is saving the planet so we could all is saving the planet so we could all live is a means of making sure your shareholders continue to profit because they'll be able to live on a sustainable planet. I mean, if it depends on what your corporate mission is, what your institution's mission is. You say generally understood to be corporate profit maximization, but some corporations feel like worker retention or worker participation or the general eradication of poverty may be more beneficial. So who are you to say what a corporation a corporation can make as their mission?
So it's not. I'm not saying that it's the law. The law is saying that. So the law of the state of Delaware and other states, Delaware tends to be the most corporations are incorporated there. Shareholder wealth maximization is the law. And if you want to do something else, you can do an alternate form. You can be a benefit corporation. You can be a nonprofit. So there are ways of doing that. But if you're going to be a for-profit corporation, then you need to focus on profit. That is the law.
You don't have to be a predatory capitalist, though. You don't have to squeeze blood out of rocks. You don't have to make it so that your workers can't even afford to pay rent in the cities where they serve. And that is so what it depends on how you define maximization of shareholder profit. If I'm a shareholder, we can take that to the extreme. Well, then we should overturn the minimum wage because that interferes with maximization of shareholder profits. That's a very simplistic definition, Mr. Padfield.
Well, the minimum wage destroys jobs and hurts the communities it's trying to help.
So we should abolish the minimum wage?
Yes, I think that would be much better for everybody. But even
and by everybody,
that,
you mean rich people?
No, I mean you would actually create more entry-level jobs that would allow more people to work their way up the ladder and get experience. What happens with the minimum wage is you end up having businesses not be able to hire at the level that they are able to, right? So they hire less people. That means more people on welfare, less people getting experience. It's a job and growth destroyer. It is not a benefit to the very people you're trying to help.
The data don't support that.
And the other thing is when you talk about how to protect the environment, for example, we have external laws for that. So in the profit seeking, the corporations have to obey the law. So if you want the corporation to be more environmentally focused, have an external environmental law. But don't tell the corporation managers.
So you support external environmental laws. You don't just support the dismantling of and neutering of the Environmental Protection Agency, for example.
I'm saying if the question is what should corporate managers do, right? And you're saying
I hear what you're saying. You're just being tricky because you want to say, oh, we'll make a law for that, even though we would do everything we could to shut down a law for that. I don't understand why. Oh, I'm being tricky? Okay, I'll take that as a compliment.
You're moving the ball quite frequently here.
I do what with the ball?
You're moving the ball, the goalpost, quite frequently here.
I didn't know there was a goalpost at all. We're having a conversation, and what I'm finding out. Well, okay, your truth is very subjective. I don't, your truth or your truth as you see it through your eyes
is a question of truth, right? So you ask a simple
what
question.
Is justice is also a question. No, I didn't ask that question. You decided to put that forth. To me, there is a contradiction, and I was trying to understand it, and I still don't understand it, which is that Republicans say that, hands off of businesses, but I know you said you're not Republican, so let me correct myself. Conservatives say hands off of businesses. Well, you didn't say you personally aren't. You said the organization isn't. But yet you want to come in and control businesses which have made their own decisions about how they are navigating those corporate rules for their own goals as a private enterprise, and you feel like you have the authority or the desire to go in and meddle with that. To me, it seems, counter to a conservative philosophy. I don't understand that.
The conservative philosophy is maximize profit within the law. The law says don't discriminate on the basis of race, so don't discriminate on the basis of race, right? The law says maximize profit.
But many corporations do, and you don't want to do anything to remedy that. Elon Musk is facing the largest discrimination lawsuit ever brought by the state of California for racism within Tesla.
So you're saying the system works.
I'm not saying the system works. He continues. Well, we'll see what happens with the lawsuit. We'll see what happens with it. I'm not saying the system works. I'm saying why don't you go after him instead of trying to stop corporations from their own corporate responsibility commitments?
Because we can't do all things at all times. So our focus is getting corporations back to making value and creating value for everyone in society, creating the most jobs, creating the most innovation and products, rather than trying to all of a sudden be all things to all people and to follow the law, including not discriminating on the basis of race.
Well, this has been delightful. I still don't understand that contradiction, but I do understand your position. So thank you for sharing it with us.
And thank you for having me on. I appreciate it as well.
Stefan Padfield, National Center for Public Policy Research, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Love to get your thoughts on some of the concepts that Mr. Padfield brought forward after News, Traffic, and Sports on KBLA Talk 1580.
Say the quiet part out loud. KBLA Talk 1580.
Thank you for joining us. I'm Mike Moore. Here's the latest from the Black Information Network. President Biden will be designating a new national monument in Chicago to honor Emmett Till and his mother. The 14-year-old African-American from Chicago was kidnapped, beaten, and brutally murdered in Mississippi in 1955 by white supremacists. Biden will sign a proclamation today to establish the Emmett Till and Mamie Till Mobley National Monument at 3 sites. No one is hurt after a 10-year-old boy fired a shot at Chicago, Illinois police during a standoff. Authorities say SWAT was called out yesterday on a report of a child experiencing mental distress. The boy fired a shot at responding officers nearby. He was eventually taken into custody after officers fired pepper spray at the porch. And that's the latest. I'm Mike Moore from your 24/7 news source, the Black Information Network and BINnews.com.
Wendy's is open until midnight or later, which means all your favorite menu items are up later too. The Baconator still tastes just as juicy and bacony at night, so listen to that craving and turn in for the night at a Wendy's drive-thru. Hours may vary at participating U.S. Wendy's.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
Former USC wide receiver Jordan Addison, a first-round pick of the Minnesota Vikings in April, is already in the doghouse with the Minnesota State Patrol. Addison was given a speeding citation over the weekend for driving 140 miles an hour in a 55-mile-an-hour zone on a Minnesota highway. Addison was pulled over at 3 a.m. He told the state trooper he was rushing to get home because his dog was having an emergency. Addison apologized on Monday but gave no medical update on his dog. Florida A&M's football team was cleared to resume all football activities. Head coach Willie Simmons shut down the HBCU program on Friday after several players were featured in a rap music video that was filmed inside the team's locker room. The administration is still investigating. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
This is KBLA Talk 1580. Talk radio. That's music to your ears. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
Maisha Cairo here with a quick recap for my time at JP Morgan Chase's Advancing Black Wealth Tour. There were speakers Ian Dunlap, Damon John, Lynn Richardson, MC Light, Don Kennedy, to name a few. Take a listen to what Justin Grant, Community Development Lead at Chase's Advancing Black Pathway, let's see what he had to say.
So I'm Justin Grant. I lead community development and national partnerships for JP Morgan Chase's Advancing Black Pathway strategy. And so we're focused on strengthening the economic foundation of black communities, and we're making targeted investments in programs like the Advancing Black Wealth Tour to help us get our tools and resources out to the community to drive sustained impact over time.
So when it comes to black and brown people, it sounds like Chase is making it their personal responsibility not only to facilitate these events, but to educate and provide resources. So, Mr. Grant, I have to ask, what does wealth building look like for the individual?
It's home ownership, it's having that freedom to be able to start your own business and create jobs in your community, and it's having that long-term plan towards retirement, having that vision for what you want your life to be, and you have the resources to actually live it.
I'm Maisha Cairo. Thanks for sticking around. That was my recap from Chase's Advancing Black Wealth Tour. First stop was here in LA, and they're taking it national.
I'm getting vaccinated with Prevnar 20.
So am I, because I'm at risk for pneumococcal pneumonia.
If you're 19 or older with chronic conditions like asthma, diabetes, COPD, or heart disease, or are 65 or older, you are at increased risk for pneumococcal pneumonia. Ask your doctor or pharmacist about Prevnar 20, pneumococcal 20-valent conjugate vaccine. It can help protect you against pneumococcal pneumonia in just one dose. Even if you've already been vaccinated with other pneumonia vaccines, Prevnar 20 may help provide added protection. Prevnar 20 is approved for adults to help prevent infections from 20 strains of the bacteria that cause pneumococcal pneumonia. Continued approval may depend on a supportive study. Don't get Prevnar 20 if you've had a severe allergic reaction to the vaccine or its ingredients. Adults with weakened immune systems may have a lower response to the vaccine. Side effects include pain and swelling at the injection site, fatigue, headache, muscle, and joint pain. For full prescribing information, please call 1-855-213-2138 or visit Prevnar20.com.
At Charmin, we heard you shouldn't talk about going to the bathroom in public, so we decided to sing about it.
Roll Charmin Ultra Strong when you drop in the beat. It cleans with way less effort on your seat. Yeah, roll it, drop it, yeah, roll it, yeah, drop it. Charmin flows extra strong from the road. Your butt hella clean while you're sitting on the bowl, yeah. It's all you need for that bathroom groove. Get you in and out without nothing to prove.
Charmin Ultra Strong cleans better so you can use less. Enjoy the go with Charmin.
Find a righteous rage and don't be afraid to say what you see. We're KBLA Talk 1580.
Yeah, so call me now if you've got something to say about what you just heard. I think it's important. We decided every other week on a Talking Point Tuesday, we'll hit you with some of the talking points straight from the mothership of talking points, these conservative think tanks and such, so that you can push back on your own and see what we are up against. This National Center for Public Policy Research has filed formal letters with McDonald's, JP Morgan Chase, Levi's, Dropbox, Pfizer, American Airlines, demanding that they stop illegal discriminatory practices. And what they mean by that is diversity, equity, and inclusion. What they mean by that is creating the opportunity for you to work there. They have a lawsuit against the directors and executives of Starbucks for their adoption. These are their words, their adoption of illegal discriminatory hiring practices. In other words, trying to get more people of color, more black people in there, especially on the higher levels. I guess soon they'll be challenging the Rooney Rule in the NFL, even though that's been completely ineffective. And they are representing they're represented by something called the American Civil Rights Project, which, like many talking point scenarios coming from extreme conservatism, is the opposite of what it's named. It's called the American Civil Rights Project, but it's really here to come for your civil rights. Let's go to Cynthia calling us from Inglewood. Hi, Cynthia. Good morning.
Good morning, Dominique. Thank you for taking my call. Thank you. But, yeah, I caught the tail end of it, but I do want to say I work for a company right now, have not hired 12 years. The only one there, black female. I went to the EOC twice.
Wow.
Because of this. And yeah, 12 years. Only black female. Recently, they just hired one, but very young, but 12 years straight. So that what he's talking about, you go into the real world, sir, and let that take practice. It's because they know they need to be held accountable in some areas, you know. And I want to say also, you know what, a lot of this stuff is unconstitutional. They put it in because they know that accountability is coming, so they do the same thing that they've been doing all these years. I look at the White House. We got a structure called the White House. So what does that tell you? I mean, that alone is their house, you know, not there. That's everybody's now. So now that's why
even though black people built it. Enslaved black people. I mean, but you got a lot of good points, Cynthia, because the gap between the reality on the ground, where you've been for 12 years seeing no black women hired, and the reality in this person's mind, which is that corporations are discriminating by offering us jobs and outreach to get us in there, is a big gap.
Oh, yeah. I'll say females. Let me correct that, too. Two was brought in, but, you know, it was two males. But
no, I said black women. I heard you. I heard you. I think you were clear. I'm just saying that that's but what you've just said perfectly illustrates the difference between a talking point and real life.
Real life.
Their talking point is that it's discrimination to bring in black people. Yeah. In real life, you're at a company for 12 years and no black women. Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry. You had another point you wanted to make.
Oh, thank you, Dominique. You're always so on time.
But, Cynthia, you had another point, right? Yeah?
I did say the White House, but I wanted to say a lot of this stuff is deriving from, I started reading more on President Andrew Johnson, and after he left, oh, my God.
Andrew Jackson,
need to read up on him.
Yeah.
Johnson. It's Johnson that took over after Lincoln, after the Civil War. He's the one that rescinded the 40 acres and a mule. It's Johnson. I thought it was Jackson, too, but it keeps coming up Johnson.
Okay, well, I know who you're talking about. You're talking about Donald Trump's hero.
And a lot of this stuff was started,
the seventh president of the United States. Is that who you mean?
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's Jackson. But I know who you're talking about.
And a lot of things. Thank you. So a lot of this could be their. We look up after Martin Luther King. This is their Andrew Johnson, their successor, because what he did was he was the one that accepted he welcomed the Confederacy back into the Union. And he pardoned them. And when you look up him, he did all the pardons. And I said, wow, this is who did all the pardons, you know. And he was a sympathizer for the South. And that's what
he was. He was the man responsible for the Indian Removal Act.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And you know, and this is the guy that Donald Trump says is his hero. And let it be noted, he was a Democrat, but back then Democrat and Republicans were switched in terms of their positions.
Yeah.
So, you know, let us not be confused by that.
So let them think on that when you look at all these pardons and all this stuff, read about him. Read about, it says Andrew Johnson. It says Johnson on the thing, but I can look up my regular history books. This is a history lesson. Lincoln's success.
I mean, I mean, he's on the $20 bill. It's Jackson,
Right.
but it's probably wrong where you're reading. But yeah, I know who you're talking about. He's one of our most evil presidents, most evil-doing presidents, and that's
so when he
saying a lot.
Them back, I could never understand that. How did he welcome them back after they went against the Union? They wanted to keep slavery. The Union wanted to just let it go. So they became your judges. They became your senators. They became your governors. So this is what we're dealing with, and the rescinding of the 40 acres and a mule. Where did it come from? Yeah, let's read our history. So I thank you, Dominique. Thank you guys for listening. We got a lot of work to do. I'm one right now witnessing female, 12 years strong, and it's real. Come down to the real work, and then that's where they can start seeing what's going on. Why don't you come down there and work at these real jobs for like a year, and then you'll see.
These pundits are not going to do that, Cynthia. I can say that because I might be a pundit, but I've done it. Cynthia, I thank you for your call and your reality check. That's what it is. It's a reality check on a Talking Point Tuesday. I bet you the talking point in Andrew Jackson's time was that 40 acres and a mule is discrimination. If you give these people 40 acres and a mule, that's discrimination against the white plantation owner. And that is exactly what they're saying. That's what the argument he's making about DEI, about socially innovative businesses. It's a lot. Not too late to call me. 800-920-1580, 800-920-1580. We're going to Deb from the city of Compton. Hi, Deb.
Hey, good morning, Dominique. How are you this morning?
I'm good. How you doing? I'm looking forward to talking with Mayor Bass in just a few minutes.
Yes, absolutely. Welcome back. And I got my passport, and I plan to join you all on the next trip to the motherland.
Yes. Next summer, girl, I'll see you there for sure.
I'm ready. I am ready. I'm ready. Listen, I wanted to say, Dominique, you and Tavis and the KBLA family have to keep doing this. You have to keep this up front for people to know that this setup, starting from the time that they stole us from where our ancestors, where we belong, we were minding our own business.
Right.
This setup is real. It's real. The game, we've never had the game the way that they have set it up. We never had the rules. We were never taught the game, but they continue to thrive. And you have to keep putting these people on the radio, keep them out here front and center so we can see them and know what they're thinking about and what their agenda is, because their agenda does not stop. And this guy was so blatant.
Yeah.
Minimum wage destroys communities and destroys the country. Minimum wage?
Right.
So in other words, I can just hire somebody and say, well, I'll pay you $20 a week. And guess what? There's no minimum wage. So I pay you what I want to pay you.
Right.
Are you kidding me?
He's not kidding you.
No, he's not. He's not. And everything that they are doing right now, it was set up from the beginning. I mean, let's think about it. The so-called 4 founding fathers of this country, they were slave owners.
Yep.
They owned enslaved people, and
to
you
a man.
Expect me to believe that we're all equal?
And in some cases, fathered children by those enslaved persons. Yeah.
Thank you. So please keep bringing people like him on the show, because
I hear you. I'm laughing because it's just like I have to get ready for that. It's every other Tuesday we're doing it now for Talking Point Tuesday, every 2 weeks. I'm not trying to do it every week. But Deb, hold that thought. It's KBLA. It's Talk 1580.
She's reclaiming her time on KBLA Talk 1580. More First Things First with Dominique DePrima when we come forward.
The family family of Keenan Anderson is suing the city of Los Angeles for $100 million. Maisha Cairo here with your K-Black Minute News, brought to you by CaliforniaBlackMedia.org. Keenan Anderson, a high school English teacher that was visiting Los Angeles from Washington, D.C., was tragically killed at the hands of the Los Angeles Police Department in January of this year. His family, alongside civil rights and personal injury attorney Benjamin Crump and Carl Douglas, have announced a $100 million lawsuit against the city of Los Angeles. Crump and Douglas are representing Keenan Anderson's son, Sincere Anderson, and his mother, Gabrielle Hansel. The family is suing for civil rights violations, assault and battery, false imprisonment, and negligence on the part of the LAPD officers. The family of Keenan Anderson and attorneys Crump and Douglas want it to be known that this is only part of a systemic issue within the fabric of police departments everywhere.
For adults with moderate to severe plaque psoriasis who are candidates for systemic or phototherapy, now there's Skyrizi, risankizumab Riza, a prescription-only 150 milligram injection. With Skyrizi, 3 out of 4 people achieve 90% clear skin at 4 months, and Skyrizi is just 4 doses a year after 2 starter doses.
Nothing and me go hand in hand. Nothing on my skin, that's my new place. Nothing is everything.
Don't use if allergic to Skyrizi. Serious allergic reactions and an increased risk of infections or a lower ability to fight them may occur. Before treatment, your doctor should check for infection and tuberculosis. Tell your doctor if you have an infection or symptoms, such as fever, sweats, chills, muscle aches, or cough, or if you plan to or recently received a vaccine.
With Skyrizi, you could achieve 90% clearer skin. Ask your doctor about the #1 dermatologist prescribed biologic in psoriasis and visit skyrizi.com or call 1-866-SKYRIZI to learn more.
Extreme heat increases your risk of heat illness and death. Warning signs of heat exhaustion include muscle cramps, headache, and nausea. Signs of heat stroke include a fever of 103 or higher, confusion, and loss of consciousness. Protect yourself by limiting time spent outdoors, staying hydrated, and staying cool in air-conditioned spaces. Learn how to stay safer from extreme heat at heatreadyca.com. Brought to you by the state of California.
Have you heard about Lendistry? Lendistry is a national Black-led small business lender that is headquartered right here in LA. Once you've started your business, Lendistry provides flexible financing options starting at $50,000 to help you access the affordable capital needed to grow. Visit lendistry.com/KBLA to learn more.
Your ancestors' favorite radio station, and your favorite morning show host. Let's get back to Dominique DePrima right now.
Right now, we're getting back to you, 800-920-1580. Deb, I wanted to let you land. You made some great points, and I wanted to let you complete your thought.
Well, I'll land by saying all of this is relevant and it's all tied in. And when you hear leaders say that basically enslavement was on-the-job training, ROTC type situation, you know that we have some serious work to do. And if we don't really get it together, we're going to be in worse trouble than we're in right now. So I know it's probably painful. It's probably like having teeth extracted without Novocaine, but Dominique, you have to do it. You have to do it for us. You have to, because we need it. We desperately need it. And I thank you for sitting through it, because, boy, I lost it a few times listening to that guy. So,
wow, real talk. All right, Deb, well, I appreciate your thoughts and insights. Absolutely do. We're going to Tom calling us from Irvine. Good morning, Tom.
Hi, Dominique. Yes, your earlier caller was talking about Andrew Jackson and Andrew Johnson, and she was correct. Andrew Jackson was the 7th president, and Andrew Johnson was the 17th president after Lincoln. He's the one that pardoned all the Confederates, and he's the one that clashed with Congress.
Okay, so she wasn't talking about Andrew Jackson. She wasn't talking about Trump's favorite president.
That's correct. She was talking about Andrew Johnson, the one that came after Lincoln.
Right, the 17th.
Correct.
Who was only president for a really short time, right? Or did he serve out a full term?
Well, it was close to a full term because Lincoln got assassinated right after he took over, or right after he was inaugurated for a second term. So he had almost 4 years, and yeah, he did a lot of damage.
The actually pivot, I guess, away from a reparation kind of framework, a pivot away from a Reconstruction framework.
Correct. Fortunately, they elected Grant after Johnson, so he kind of got things back on track with Reconstruction for his 2 terms. But Johnson kind of delayed things for about 4 years.
Another Democrat, because back then the positions were reversed.
Right on.
Yeah. So
exactly.
Tom, are you like Tavis? Are you a history buff?
Yes, I'm not as smart as Tavis, but yes.
Well, hardly
I
anybody
history.
is, but yeah.
Yeah. It's funny how the conservatives nowadays, they keep pushing how the Democratic Party was the party of slavery, but they fail to mention that the Democratic Party back then were the conservatives, and the Republicans back then were the liberals.
Right. I mean, that's why
the platforms have swapped.
To me, that's why it's one of the most disingenuous talking points ever.
You are. Yep.
They call themselves the party of Lincoln, but you also are the party of saying that slavery was a job training program. I mean, how do those 2 talking points fit under the same hat?
Well, they I guess they're just not aware of their own hypocrisy.
Do you think so? Because I really think, I sometimes think it's just craven, disregard for human life. Like, if it was just like they didn't get it, then I would feel more hopeful. But I mean, we're talking to this guy that we were just talking with. One of the things I didn't get to, they've sent a formal demand letter to Target to try to force them to reconsider their decision to give over their stores to transgender activism while donating sums to organizations that seek to keep teachers from telling parents about children's gender confusion. I mean, so you're trying to dictate a corporation's portfolio of what they want to give to, what they don't want to give to, and what their policies are for how they want to display their product or market their product. To me, that doesn't seem like a conservative value. It seems very nanny state.
Well, I bounce back and forth with what you were just saying, whether they're just craven or they're unaware, and it's hard to tell. I go back and forth. It's hard to figure these people out.
I'm an optimist, so I always think that anyone can be redeemed. Anyone can be resurrected, changed, come to Jesus, see the light. Come over to the progressive side. We have cookies. I mean, I always think there's hope, but this lately, and maybe it's a mixed bag, Tom. Maybe some of them are, just opportunists that, are actually serial liars, like the former president, the 45th, and maybe some of them are just, unaware.
Yes. Yeah. I don't know. You remember Lee Atwater? He confessed on his deathbed how all the things he did, with the Nixon administration about all the talking points that they used to use to demonize black people, to win elections. And I guess he had a come to Jesus moment on his deathbed. I don't know if that's what it will take.
Yeah. I wonder if that gets you in the pearly gates. Do evil all your life, and then right before you leave the building, say, "Sorry, black people. Sorry for the Southern strategy. Yeah. Sorry for ruining the rest. The next 3 or 4 decades."
Exactly.
Well, Tom, I appreciate the historical correction, or clarification, I should say. And I appreciate your being part of our KBLA delegation.
I'm happy to be it. and thank you for taking my call.
Anytime. As I said, I'm so excited. We're launching a new feature right now. It's called Mornings with the Mayor. Once a month, Mayor Karen Bass, the honorable mayor of our beautiful city of Los Angeles, will sit down with us here at KBLA, specifically me, on First Things First, and have a candid conversation about what's going on in our city, how things are looking, and what is new. That's coming up next, only on KBLA Talk 1580.
KBLA Talk 1580 is an intervention. When we come forward,